Okay, everybody, welcome back from lunch. I have failed to show you an example, so I'm going to start off by showing you examples that I wanted to show you. It's on exception handling and file I/O, particularly the buffer reader. And we're going to see yet another text editor notepad. But we're also going to see something else too, which is why I want to show you this as well. We're going to see the URL object being used with a website. So we're going to go out to a website, save the contents of what we find on the website, and then we're going to save it to a file. So it's really opening up, creating a file, loading a file, using a buffer reader. So this is what I've got highlighted here is lecture 8 and 9, which is what we just finished going over. We didn't go over 9. 9 is out here, actually. 9 I'll save for next time, or unless I might hit it later. 9 is going to be on, let me just show you real quick here. 9, and I'll save you the PowerPoint for right now, is on network programming. So we'll talk about a little bit about 9 next time we meet. So I'm going to kind of skip that for now. But if you download this example here, it comes in a Java file, excuse me, zip file that looks like this. JP 8 and 9, huh? The navigation for this page is going to be, if you go to the main website, click on Object-Oriented Programming in Java, go down to Lecture Examples, which is in the second box. The lecture examples will take you to 8 and 9 example further down the road. They are sort of sequentially, the examples are actually sequentially placed. The 8 and 9 is right above the swing examples for Notepad, if you remember where we got those, and the collections is also in the same spot. The ones from the first weekend, by the way, just to refresh your memory, we went over these lecture 1, shape, point, circle, cylinder, all this stuff we kind of went over at the first weekend, so that's why we have skipped all the way down to the bottom of this. There are some other ones in here for linked list examples that we did not go over, hash set examples if you're interested. They're basically more examples for you that are kind of cleanly put together so you can sort of see the functionality of what's going on. But we are not going to do Java docs this weekend. We'll do it next weekend, and because we still have one more weekend of this. But the classes, inheritance, interfaces, this is from this weekend. And we did the Hello World tutorial for Android, and we did the web view last time. First weekend, so we're going to start in with some other stuff as soon as I get done with this example. So if you download the example and you click on the file, you have two, text editor Gui and URL get.java. They're two separate programs. If you load them up into an Eclipse project, I put them in a project called text editor. And here they are here. Just create a default project, a drag and drop, and put the two files into it. And let me load it so you can see what we're looking at, then we'll go through the code. I want to go through the one first that's called URL get.java. So I'm going to right click over here, do a run as a Java application, and run the URL get. And you're not going to see anything happen. There's no GUI to it. But let me tell you what happened actually. It will open and close and write a file, and where it's going to write it to is the home directory of the project. So over here in the documents folder in a workspace, I called the project text editor. If I go to the text editor project, I see this file. It's called testpage.txt. This doesn't actually exist, so if I delete it right now, run the program again, the program is creating this file. So let me just run it. So now you see it, now you don't. Or so now you don't see it, and then now you do see it. So the program just creates this file. There's no interface to it. So what is it doing when it creates this file? This file, by the way, is a text file, but it's an HTML file. When I open it up in text edit, it actually shows it to me with colored. If I actually open it up here with, let's say, Text Wrangler, it should show me the HTML formatted code, which is right here. This file, actually, believe it or not, is on my website, and it's called testpage.html. So if I go and open up a web browser, and I go to test page. Oops, test page. I got it right here. Test page.html. There it is, right there. So the example is going to the internet. In fact, let me bring up the source code now so we can see what I'm talking about. Is a good demonstration of some concepts we just went over on the PowerPoint. It's going out to this URL using JavaNet. So it's part of the JavaNet, which is I haven't gone over yet, but don't worry about it. We'll hit that next time. And the Java IO, which I did just go over. So the name of the class is called URL get. So it goes out to the URL, gets the page that's there, reads it into a buffer reader, and then writes it out to a file for us. So what we're doing here then is we have a method that's returning a string, and the method is called getSite. And getSite is taking on a string URL that we're going to pass to it, which is that URL to bhecker/test testpage.html. So we've got a string builder, SB, it's going to be equal to new string builder. Well, that's part of the string functionality that we get with the base Java core packages. And here's the pieces I wanted to show you all put together. So here's our exception handling. We're going to do a try, and then we have a catch, and then we have finally a return from it. The try is going to create a URL connection object called connection, which is going to be a new URL, sending a new URL to and running a .open connection on a URL. So we have a special object type that keeps track of URLs, a special object type for connections, URL connections. And then we have the code underneath, which is the one you wanted to, which is the one you kind of want to look at because this is what we just went over. Actually, make this a little bit bigger so it all goes on one page. Here's our buffer reader equal new buffer reader, and we're sending the new buffer reader the input stream. So here's the input stream reader, and the input stream reader, and we're nesting inside of that a call to connection.getInputStream. This is our connection. Our connection for the get input stream is going and using this new URL that's being created from this new URL. So this is a method, this is a new instance of an object that's created without a reference to the object. So you can go like new person, and then if person had a constructor that took on a name, it could be new person, and then I put the name in here. So this one's going to be new URL. URL has a constructor that takes a URL, turns it into a URL object that we can send and use with a connection object. And we're running the method openConnection on this one. So after we've opened the connection, then we're going connection.getInputStream, which is the method that's going to get the input stream from the connection. And then we're going down here while the reader.ready, while it's ready, actually it's taking in information. It's going to go take it into a certain point. SB, which is our string builder, append reader.readLine and put a line return at the end. So it's reading it line by line. And then reader close. Close the reader. The reader is the buffered reader. So this is yet another example of the class that we just went over for the buffer reader. And then on the bottom here we have the catch malformed URL exception, and we also have a catch on the IO exception. So we called it IOE. So if that's the case, then SB.append IO error, or here append mal URL. So in the file when we opened it up, it would say bad malformed URL or IO error. So if I give it, and I'll do that in a few minutes to test it out kind of thing, if I give this a wrong name over here or something, make something bad, I'm going to end up with something bad in the file, or something in the file that's going to show me that it was a bad one. So here's an example of our throwing of our exceptions. So if I come over here and I take a look, here's my main method, and it's going to throw an unsupported encoding exception and an IO exception. So this one over here didn't throw anything, but we're using the try and the catch. In our throw over here, we're going to throw something, and we're not going to do anything with it, but it's going to throw the exception. So I would actually have something appear in the console window that would be thrown. That would tell me if something were wrong with it. What are we doing here? We're using a URL get, and we're going to call it test. So this is get the URL from test was going to be equal to new URL get object. So the buffer reader writer, this is how we're going to write it actually, equals new buffer writer using a new output stream writer, new file output stream. Here's the name of the file. So we created, this could all be on one line. It's just written out this way because it's sometimes easier to see it that way, but this is essentially the opposite of this up here. This is a reader, this is the writer. Using the same things, this is buffer writer and this is buffer reader. So usually you're going to have them both working together. If you have a buffer reader, you're going to have a buffer writer. You're not going to mix and match different types because then you're going to basically have the data work correctly. What we're going to do, we're going to write, this is called the writer, write, and we're going to use the test.getSite. And out here, we are setting the get site to this particular website here, which is where that page was. The example you're going to have is going to have a different page number. I switched the name of the file and I switched the website around because the one I had out there wasn't there anymore, and it was actually throwing the error. And then writer close. So if I change this here and malform it a little bit, there's no such thing as a test page.h going on here. So if I do that, and it's going to write over the file that already exists out here. Actually, we'll just get rid of it just so I can demonstrate something to you. If I run it again, now it's not going to find test page.h. So let's see what happens. If I run it, run configuration, excuse me, not run configuration. Now I'm thinking about Android already. Run as Java application. I'm going to run a URL get here, and then nothing's going to happen. I don't have anything being thrown, but out here on the test page it says IO error. It says IO error was written to the file because that's a bad URL. And then now over here, IO exception, it couldn't open up that file. It tried to open up the file to read it. And so it threw, we can see that it threw the IO exception here. So just one way of using exception handling to make it clear in terms of what you're going to do, and make it easy to read. Questions on the URL? Look at URL. So you can play around with it if you want. I believe it should overwrite that file, but let me just test real quick here. HTML. I'll put the real page back in here. I have that error at the beginning of the file. So I'm going to see, because I'm actually kind of curious, I can't remember what the example does. It overwrote it, yeah, so. If the IO error is now gone and the entire file was replaced, because it's writing the file out using the same name, so it's writing it over on top of the existing file. So it's not appending the file, it's writing a new file each time you do it. So it's just kind of an interesting example, demonstrating the use of the, well, yes?
Allocate the test page.txt in a different directory?
You'd have to specify, you'd actually, instead of doing it this way, you'd actually have to specify a file, give it a name and a path, and then write it to the file, and then take that file and put it in whatever directory. If you do this, it's actually, this is going to be the file name. So if I go like this and I go user something, right, and I run it, you'll have a switch. You'll have an error here if you do this because it's expecting a switch. So, but if you actually put a path in here like this, it'll append that to the file, and that'll be the file name. So you have to use a slightly different technique to actually write it out to a file and specify the path for the file. So it's a slightly different way of doing it. If you look at the notepad, one of the notepad directories, you'll see it actually. In fact, it might even be in this one here. I'll point it out when I see it.
And also, if I do want to create the name of t-text page.f, can I rename it automatically based on the HTML name?
Oh, interesting. You could do a toText to the get site. You could do it that way. You'd have to convert this because this is not in a text format. So it's going to write it's going to get the site from the URL. This is a URL format. That's going to get the text, get site. So you could convert it easily to string. Actually, use a toString method on it and convert it. You can get it. So, play around with it, actually. So, you'll get it. So the other one in here is called Text Editor Gui. Text Editor Gui is also using the URL component. Let me see what Text Editor Gui is actually doing. Well, let me run it so you can see what I'm talking about. It's not reading and writing. It is opening up yet another text editor, and it's loading a file from a URL and putting it into the text window that we're using. So, and this one also is changing the background color of the window. So here, if I click on the www button, now the page is loading up into the window. So it's essentially getting, this button is getting the text from here. So you could use the same method that gets the text from here and puts the text for the file name, sets the file name, and then use the file name as a string and put the string in here. So to answer your question here, I would I'd create a string that was equivalent to the get text, or convert this one to a string, and then put the string name in here instead of hard setting it. Because this is taking a string, so any string variable can be put in here in the substitution. So let's see. So this one is dynamic. So for example, I have this test page.h. I put that in there. It says IO error. Now it's reusing my object is what it's doing. And so it's using the other object. It's setting up and running identically. But we are setting the URL in the text editor. So it's yet again another. Let's see what happens. Actually, it'll take everything. This is not even. This is PHP BB, which is. I wonder what it would do for the ITU. Actually, let's see. It's obviously showing HTML text in a text format. It's not formatting it. You can make a rich text and actually format it for HTML, and then you have essentially a web browser. If you wanted to do that, you can actually create your own web browser. It's not too hard actually. Because what we've done is just created the Go line right here. So what we're not doing, however, is converting this text to HTML format. We're showing it in a raw text format. And it's also editable. So as an example here, I have this in here, and this is the ITU website. I could do this here and say this is a test. And then go File, Save. And then I've saved it, but it didn't say where did I save it as. Well, it didn't save it back to itu.edu. I don't have permissions to write to that website. I want to say it probably saved it in the current directory. Here it is here. It's called No Name. So if I click on No Name and bring it up, it says this is a test up here. Because I set a file default as No Name or Untitled. You can call it Untitled. So here it is here. It thinks it's an HTML file. Because there's HTML text in it, but it's loading it up as a. This is interesting. This is the text for the ITU website. So.
Yeah, HTML extension.
We do. If we loaded it up with an HTML extension, if I saved it like this and let's see, added it to no name and put .html, it will bring it up in my default program that loads HTML programs, which is going to be either Safari or Firefox, depending upon Firefox. Here it is. So now I put this as a test up here, and I have the ITU website. So it's just a bit playing around with files, just to show you basically how easy it is to play around with files. We didn't update anything actually out there. We updated it in the program. So let's take a look at the text for this. This one's called Text Editor Gui, and it's very similar to the other notepads we just looked at. It's using I/O for the file I/O that's getting it from the internet. We can also use it as a text editor, so you can type some stuff in there and save it and do some stuff with it. It is doing some of the color and the formatting stuff, so if you're still looking for examples on how to put it together, you have some examples there to look at. But we're using the file object here, so file, creating a variable file that's going to be a data member here, so it's private, it's only used inside of the class object, and it's called file name, and it's going to be equal to file no name. That's where we're getting the no name from. So if I wanted to save it, all I have to do is put a .exe extension on it, or use file chooser, pick a file, and then save it by its file name, which is how you can do it actually for your other program too, for the other thing. So create a new form for the text editor. We have the text editor GUI. What's interesting about this, I started taking out the comments, and I went, no, I probably should leave the comments in, actually, because here's the interesting thing about this particular example. It was created using a swing editor. So instead of hard coding this, the code was generated, and I can't remember which editor it was. I wish I could. I'll probably find it eventually, but I couldn't find it. I was trying to look for it at the lunch break, and I couldn't find it. But this is why we have all these comments in here. Generate last event, perform, and all this code here is the editor form that was created. So they're calling it a form in the comments up here because creates a new form for the text editor. It's the terminology that was used in the GUI program. So this is actual output from one of those run-of-the-mill swing GUI editors that allows you to drag and drop and put stuff on a canvas or a form. And then it converts it to Java code, and I'm taking this Java code, I'm using it inside of Eclipse now. I don't even remember which program it was made in. But you can see there's not too many ways of generating the code. It pretty much all looks the same. But it's done in an odd kind of way. This one says initializing components. So all of the components were put inside of an initialize method, so they're all used together. So it's showing you another way of grouping things to create it. This one's convoluted because it comes from a generator program. So don't really worry about the code in here outside of the and then it's also doing this, Java X swing. You know, so it's like, why didn't you just include Java swing? And I corrected it before we started the class, but up here it actually runs Java X swing something or other before JFrame, actually. So I took it out and actually put this in here. So if I take this out, I'll get the original code that comes back out of here. This is well, import it. So anyway, the way that you're going to want to do it is import it. But if you take out all of these here as an example, then you can import the button in here and do it more standard-like. So we have the import for the button up here rather than putting it here. So this is all now unnecessary. So. Alright, so setting the default close operation here, setting the title, setting the frame, the name of the frame, copying the button for the copy button for all the different components. So this is the same stuff we went over about 4 or 5 different times with each one of our other ones. Here, hold on one second, let me... Alright, so instead of going over this multiple times again, I'm not going to. Just look at the videos or go back and through all of the other stuff. It's just, and in fact, this is kind of convoluted, so I'm not going to go over it. But long story short, it's the same stuff as before, all put together to create another text editor. This is an interesting I/O exception down here at the bottom. Pardon, can't open the file. Please contact with, please contact this person over here because you can't open the file. So anyway, made by a code generator. So take it for what it's got. And don't worry about the comments, but it's if you study the code, take a look at it, you'll see how the URL is working, and the URL object is basically just loading it. So URL tests get site from the URL. It's loading it into the test page. It's the same actual, not this. It's not using the same file. It's not using this one down here. It's actually just repeating the code. So it's a standalone program. You don't need to include URL get with this one. It's actually just repeating the 1, 2, 3, 4 lines of code, actually, to make it work. So anyway, I just thought I'd show that to you because I hadn't shown it to you. And it's good examples. What you want to look for in there is a good example of the exception handling and the file I/O. So, all right. So I'm going to stop this video, start fresh, because we're going to start with a new topic.